Kia ora koutou. Welcome this morning to our meeting. We'd like to start the opening karakia. It would be lovely if you could all join with me. The words are on the screen here. Takina te marama kia ta. Lovely, thank you for that. So I believe we have no apologies today, which is wonderful to have a full turnout. And if I could ask for any interest to be disclosed to our governance team, and they will capture those for the minutes. Is there anything anyone needs to declare in relation to the specific agenda items today? No. Thank you. And there are no late items, but I do want to confirm the order of the meeting, just pass a resolution on that the order of the meeting be confirmed subject to the public excluded item 11, which is the organisational risk discussion with the Chief Executive, being taken after public excluded item 23, which is the 26-27 annual plan and waters transition project risk updates, and item 10, resolution to exclude the public being no longer required. If I could have a mover. Thanks, Shane. And seconder, thank you. So now if we could look at the minutes, which are on page 9, and the minutes have been pre-circulated to the committee. Does anybody have any changes or amendments to those minutes? Okay. I'll pass the motion then that the open minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee held on the 15th of December 25, having been circulated, be taken as read and confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. Thanks, Roger and Claire. So we'll now move to the risk management update, which is page 41, and invite George and Jenny to speak to this. And so while the team are heading up here, I will just introduce, we've got some important people sitting around the table today that most of you will have met, but some of you won't have. So starting at this side, we have Renee and Ophi from Audit New Zealand. Yeah. And then most of you will, I'm sure, know Harev, who's our internal assurance advisor. And then Aaron and Jade from PwC, who are helping us with our waters transition assurance and other internal audit programs. So welcome to you all. Thank you. Wonderful to have you with us today. So over to you, George. Yeah.
Morena. All right, so just in regards to the risk management update and quarterly risk report, there's probably 4 just items within there that I just would like to highlight to the committee. The first one is around commentary contained in the report around the World Economic Forum Global Risk report, which provides some sort of more global context around risk that's happening that does actually potentially over time impact New Zealand. And that's particularly relevant now with the geopolitical risk and what we're experiencing in regards to sort of impacts on our fuel supply at the moment. I did just want to touch on what we are doing as a council in regard to that geopolitical risk. So James is liaising with neighbouring councils about the work that they're doing as well, who are a little bit ahead of us in this space and just understanding what they might be putting in place. We've got Earl White from Bancorp presenting to the Finance and Corporate Committee on the 25th of Feb. And he will be specifically talking to council around inflation, global oil supply, etc., and giving you some sort of context and information around what's happening there. The wider executive team are also starting to just discuss the impacts and potentially what it might mean. And the situation, I guess, if it's needed, will be brought into the development of the annual plan as well. So I just wanted to highlight that there is very much a point of discussion at a number of levels. The second element I wanted to touch on was recovery, which is talked about within the paper. Nothing further at this stage in addition to the briefing that Sally gave councillors last week. We are working through the impacts at the moment, some of which will be reflected in the 8-month forecast, some of which won't be, but we'll be seeking to bring back some more financial details at the beginning of April as part of the annual plan around that, if we have the information, which we're hoping that we do. The third element is the central reforms. So we do specifically talk about that within the paper as well, in regard to, it's got a one-page diagram in there, and you can see the volume of reform that is going to be impacting local government over time. And then the fourth element, just to bring out, is really around the interconnectivity of all these top risks and the complexity within which we're working on. So these aren't viewed in isolation, and you'll see that diagram within the paper that you've received. Lastly, just a heads up, the additional mitigants in regards to those top risks that you see in Appendix 1, they are currently being reviewed in the context of the weather event and prioritisation of work streams and allocation of resourcing. So just wanted to highlight that to you in regards to the status of those pieces of work. So that's the summary. I just wanted to raise those elements with you.
Thank you, George. And I particularly appreciate you giving the initial context around what's being done around the geopolitical and the current changes around that. So does anyone have any questions? Claire?
Yeah, thanks. This is always a really meaty report, isn't it? And thanks for the commentary, George, because it did seem to be strange when I looked at the summary of top risks. That's on page 54 of our agenda, and like the financial strategy and the climate change ones, you know, the change in risk, status was sort of just the same, But something I did pick up was the period that the report covers ends in January, and yet we're midway through, you know, March. It seems a bit strange that we can't actually have a cutoff that's a bit closer to our current date. And because, you know, a lot of stuff has actually happened, you know, in February, that would have been captured otherwise. So is there any flexibility or a way that we can sort of make sure that the cutoff for the reporting of this is sort of a bit closer to our meeting time?
So thank you, Councillor St Pierre. So all the commentary and the non-financials, etc., are very much up to date at the point of writing the report. Where we are constrained is around our financial reporting cycle and some of our statutory reporting. So the reference to January is about those aspects, not really the status of those non-financial and what is happening with in our environment, if that makes sense. I think James wants to add something to that.
Yeah, you're quite right, Claire. Normally we would have updated information, but there's 2 times during the year that we struggle to get the financials out, and that's the 4-month and 8-month reforecast. And particularly with what's going on in the relief efforts and the likes, is the 8-month forecast is a big job, and it's the most updated view we'll get to the end of the year financials. So it's really important we get that right. That will be discussed in a week and a half's time at Finance Corporate.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Shane.
Just a comment of concern is if you look at risk 7, which is basically reputational, and we haven't made a lot of progress on that particular area. And a lot of us who came onto council were very eager to focus on this particular risk. So I'm just hoping that we can shortly have some action, especially the what's that report called? The deep dive. Yeah, the deep dive. So the timing of that, I'm just feeling a little bit of concern that we're sort of not focusing enough on that area.
So that deep dive was scheduled for today. However, with the weather event and recovery, with both Sally and Lisa having to divert their resource to that, we were unable to. So it will come as a deep dive at the next RAC meeting.
And just to add a further comment, so the satisfaction survey is a KRI, But in terms of the areas that need focusing to help with this particular risk, it's communication strategy and also our desires to get some early wins. So just make sure that's not left out of that whole package.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah, sorry, folks. Hey, firstly, I recognise the amount of effort that's gone into this, and you certainly see there's a lot of work here. And just in terms of as we sort of try and move to that mature level in our overarching risk management, the one thing I struggled with a wee bit in this reporting was just to see the movement in quarter. So that status commentary, like I've got no idea if that's just a general status commentary or if that's what happened. And by the way, I wouldn't, if some of the in-quarter commentary is, we didn't do anything on this in the last quarter, that's okay. I'm not expecting that, but it's really, as we try and mature it, it all becomes about what changed in the quarter and what did we do in the quarter in terms of our mitigation actions? Because the mitigation actions are the only things we can actually do about all of this stuff. And so it's been very well put together. So if it was just easier to see what actually happened in the quarter, that makes it a lot easier to get a feel for where we are and whether, how things are moving.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Kempson. Really appreciate that. Anything we can do to make this more meaningful, we will absolutely, and we'll have a look at that for the next quarter.
Thank you. Yes, Claire.
Yeah, thanks. So I was going to pick up on some of the non-financial reports now. Yeah. So I noticed that there was a comment on the resident perception survey, but we used to get updates for the quarterly, like every quarter. Yeah. And I was surprised that there wasn't actually any commentary about how there might have been some trends identified in some of the, I suppose, latest stats. Like we did have a bit of an update before Christmas. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that would have been, and it was good news, I thought. Yeah. So is there an intention to include those quarterly results that we're getting, or is that more appropriately reported in another place, like to another committee or stuff like that in more detail? Yeah.
Yeah, so our intention, is to be fully transparent every quarter around those results. Historically, we did not formally report on them just because they can be a bit volatile from quarter to quarter.
Yeah.
But you're right, we did share those just before Christmas. We do have the next quarter. I haven't had a look at them in detail, but we will get those to you. And I take your point from a KRI reporting perspective. We should be doing these within this report as well as part of that continuous improvement. So the intent is certainly there, Councillor St Pierre. We just haven't quite got them to you yet.
Okay, cool, that's great. And then on page 58, at the bottom, it talks about a cybersecurity response exercise was conducted. Yeah, but there's no commentary as to what the outcome was, whether it was satisfactory. I'm expecting glowing reports, actually. Yeah. Yeah, so again, I thought it was a missed opportunity because the whole idea of this update is to keep us informed. It says the exercise was completed on the 24th of February, so I guess it might have been a bit on the edge of when we were actually preparing the agenda item, but I am quite keen to know how we are doing.
Yes, the exercise was completed on the 24th of Feb. I'm our manager, information systems, organised it with Triple E somewhere awaiting the report. There'll be detail from that and from the planned audit of SAM for compliance in the 6-monthly cybersecurity update next month. So you'll get a very full report.
Yeah, okay, cool, thanks. And then I've got two other minor points. On the next page is 59, we've got the staff turnover, I think. And on the right-hand side, we've got average vacancies and number of internal appointments. And the comparison is only with the last quarter. I think it'd be really helpful for us to have a longer comparison, like a longer time frame to compare, like maybe 4 quarters or even 8 quarters. These are really key, I suppose, indicators for us. yeah, I do get a bit frustrated when we only have such a narrow window to compare to. Yeah, I mean, especially when you're thinking about staff turnover, yeah, and just measuring that on a quarterly basis and just comparing it to 1 quarter back. Yeah, yeah, I'd love it to have,
So Claire, I hear you. I'm just conscious of the workload pressure that the team are under. So I wonder if that's something that we leave with the team to have a look at. And there might be maybe one statistic like the turnover, that it might be good to have the longer comparison, but some of those others it's probably okay. I don't know, George, have you got a comment?
Yeah, it's certainly an area, and with Anna coming on and the head of people and capability, we would like to enhance what we are reporting through to the various forums. So it's certainly an action point when we can. Just in terms of turnover, there is a 12-month view from December 2024 through to 25, if that's helpful, Councillor St Pierre. But definitely do hear you. It is an intent when we can get to it.
thank you. And then lastly, it was to do with the health and safety statistics, actually, just the way there's been a drop off in the number of reports for insignificant items. What page is that? 62, I think, and minor, like it's pretty marked. And it suggests actually that there might be a bit of complacency creeping in and people aren't bothering to actually make reports about it. Like that's the impression I got looking at that graph. Yeah, that one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So is there any way that you can sort of assure us that actually that's not the case?
I guess what you're looking there is also January, December, January, the last one. So January is obviously a period of time when a number of staff, or most staff, are taking time off work. So you would naturally expect to see a decrease at that point in time. I think this will also come through in terms of the enhanced reporting, where we want to give you longer trends over time and actually understand if that is an unusual dip or not. Just in regards to the health and safety audit, which Hare will allude to in his report, is currently underway. And once that's complete, we'll give a full system review of health and safety. And as part of that, it will be, what are those actions we're taking to monitor? So it will come, but I don't think it's unusual for January.
That's really helpful, actually. Thanks, George. Appreciate that. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Any further questions? Right. Well, look, I've got my mic off, sorry. Let's start that again. So that the Risk and Assurance Committee received the report of Jenny Wilson, Senior Business Resilience and Risk Advisor, titled Risk Management Update, including Appendix 1, Quarterly Risk Report, November 25 to January 26. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thanks, Claire and Anne. Yeah, thank you. So our next report is the Assurance Update, and I'll invite Hare to come up the front. So this is Hare's first report to the committee. So welcome.
I'm sorry. I won't start that all over again. It's my privilege to be here today and to present to you. I am excited and welcome the opportunity to be able to work with each one of you during my capacity here today. My focus over the last few weeks have been on induction and becoming familiar with a lot of the systems and processes that have helped so that I can build relationships across the organization. Now turning my time into driving the internal assurance program forward, I just want to highlight a few things. Some of the activities were temporarily disrupted by the February weather event as resources were redirected to the organizational response and recovery. Work is now recommenced and our priorities are being adjusted to meet those needs. It is likely that a portion of the strategic internal audits may be pushed into the new year, specifically the growth and the generative AI. And program assurance for the Waikato Waters transition is being provided by PwC. The first report went to Council on February 25th, and a further update will be given in a separate item during the agenda. And so I pass the time for questions if there are any.
Yes, Claire. Yeah.
Thank you, and lovely to meet you. Thanks, Hari. This first time I've had the pleasure of being in a meeting with you. And really pleased to see the work that you're doing. So the question I wanted to check with you was you mentioned that work that you were going to do on the growth is going to have to be pushed out a bit more. But we were really hoping to benefit from some of that work as we move into our planning cycle for the long-term plan. So just wanted to check, is that going to make a big difference to us? You know, like, is it going to put at risk what we were hoping to have those outcomes, as we move into, that preparatory work? I see that James is going to answer that.
Yeah, Councillor Clare, good question. It's not going to impact on the core piece of work we're doing around the financial strategy and the LTP as we move forward. That won't impact it. It's more around the reporting and analytics piece. So at this stage, no direct impact on in terms of council's decision around growth CapEx, the likes in the new LTP. So I don't see that impacting. Your understanding as well, Aaron and Jade?
Yeah, I might just add to that. So Councillor St Pierre, it's a placeholder at the moment. It hasn't been scoped. We put it in there in terms of we know that it's important, but as we went through the strategic growth program planning and the LTP, figuring out what's going to add the most value. So when we get to that point, we'll work with Jade and Aaron around scoping out a piece of work. Yeah.
Oh, look, thanks. I wonder if there's any chance that some elected members might have some involvement in that. It's just that, when we were setting our strategic priorities through our induction, we actually identified that, like, we want to be really, I suppose, demonstrating excellent governance and management of growth. And we haven't scoped what that means either, actually, I don't think. But if there was some way that some of us could just be in on it, just understand what you guys are thinking about and whether or not we need anything more too. I don't know. I'm not wanting to make things complicated, but yeah, we've got some priorities too that we want to see realised as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor St Pierre, and I'll refer you to the separate item to talk a little bit more about the strategic growth program. But absolutely welcome involvement in the scoping of that piece of work, and it would obviously go through this table too for approval.
Yeah, just to add, it's also a follow-up, Councillor, in terms of the reporting improvements that we sought from council at the end of last triennium and how we make the improvements. So part of the work we'll be looking with Jade and Aaron to do for us is to help scope up what that looks like. It's a little bit chicken and egg at the moment, actually. You really got to bite into it till you figure out what we need to scope that project up.
Okay. Ian? Yeah.
Hi, Harry. Nice to meet you. I'm Ian. I appreciate you're just getting up to speed. I had a little bit of trouble understanding this report because the graphic on page 64 for our internal assurance program, the headings in there didn't match the headings of the descriptions underneath. So I'd asked if we could try and sort that out. I mean, I understood it. I can read the words, but I couldn't quite map one to the other. And then just going forward, it would be, as you sort of get your teeth into things, I think it would be helpful to see a little bit more of some clear objectives for the next quarter. I realised that graphic was a placeholder, but it would be nice to know, what is actually coming up. And that's not me, putting something there to beat someone up with, but if you don't put dates down, you don't know if you're making them or you're missing them. And both of those are important because people don't tend to try and do a bad job, but sometimes we miss things. And if that means we need to take a different approach or provide more help, that's what we need to do. And then just one specific, you're going to get sick of hearing this from me in all meetings. Anything we do to push Gen AI out to the right is a bad idea. Don't kid yourself that isn't already here. It is already here. I can tell you with other hats on that there is already work being done through that generative AI that is massively shortcutting the level of effort you need. And just even the most recent models that have been released in the past few months are a step change in capability. So anything that we can do to accelerate our ability to accept that into the business is a huge, huge time and effort saver, given the huge pressures that I know this organisation is under.
Just a point of clarification, Councillor Kempson. The graphic is about what we're planned to do. Underneath is the improvement programs that's come out of past audits. That's why the headings are different. So they're the implementing the recommendations through the improvement programs. So that's why the graphic and the text underneath doesn't quite align.
So I think we've got a question from Shane and then from Mike.
Welcome to Waipa District Council. It's a difficult job to do, to be an internal auditor when you're employed by the organisation that you're auditing. So I'm just trying to understand, I wasn't here when you were appointed, understand the structures around you to ensure that you are independent and you keep that independent.
Perhaps can I just jump in there? So there's quite a number of things that are in place, and I might invite George to talk about them, but you will notice on the agenda today we have elected member only time with Hare, so that is part of the independence. Yeah, so that is one bit, but I will invite George to talk about some of the other processes. Yeah.
So Hare, as part of his job description, is given mandate in terms of direct lines through to the CE and the independent chair of ARC as needed to escalate things. That's also within our internal assurance charter that we operate with as a business is to go direct. He also has the opportunity to go direct to Jade and Aaron to talk through anything in their independent role as well. So Hare has a number of avenues to escalate things that he believes need to be to independent parties. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That answers my question.
Me, Mike. Yeah.
Thanks to the chair. Kia ora Hare. Just off the back of Councillor Kempson's kōrero around the sort of generative AI adoption, and look, it won't just be this committee, it'll be brought up in other committees, but sometimes you have to have something to double something in terms of investment. And this is something I think we should be doubling our investment in this, not looking at stepping away from it, and find the opportunity cost of what it has to give for that to happen, because I totally agree. This is the future. This is how this organisation is predominantly going to become a lot more efficient. And I'd like to see our efforts doubled down in this area and come and tell us, this committee or others, what has to give for that to happen.
I do just want to note that, Mayor Mike, we understand that, and I guess this needs to be a discussion as part of annual plan and LTP development in terms of trade-offs.
Yes, Mike.
So just following on from that, the scope for this generative AI adoption audit has been received. What's the thrust of that? Is it the risks of adoption or the risks of not adoption, or both of them? Just can you give me a sense of what this what this audit's trying to achieve?
Yeah, sure, happy to. So look, it's essentially looking at your adoption journey, where you're at, what are the next steps. From a maturity perspective, from a risk angle, we've provided 3 different scoping options of parts that we can look at. And so we've had a couple of conversations with management to date. It's just working out what of those 3 options or a combination of those are the best place to focus. But essentially, the thrust of it, the recommendations, we're looking to further mature you on your journey in a safe and responsible way, whilst taking advantage of the benefits that are available from that.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? So we'll now move to the Cambridge Connections paper, the quarterly update on progress, and invite Katie, who I think is online.
Well, just.
No, sorry, in person.
She was coming online.
Yeah.
Is she not online as yet?
Okay. Maybe we'll just try quickly and see if she can join. Otherwise, we might move on to the next one.
She's this one as well.
Okay.
So.
Just bear with us a moment while we try and get Katie.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Kia ora, Katie. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, kia ora. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble trying to turn on my camera this morning.
Look, we can hear you loud and clearly, so thank you so much for joining. And we're just on to the Cambridge Connections paper. Yeah. If you'd like to make some comments.
Yes, thank you. So this is the quarterly update.
Are you there, Katie?
Okay, let's try again. Can you hear me again now?
Yes.
I'm sorry about the technology here. All right, so this is obviously a quarterly update for Cambridge Connections. We've got the paper which we can take as read. So 2 components really that we're reporting on. One is an update around the comms and engagement with a large community engagement phase that's just finished. And then secondly, overall sort of progress about the project. So a little bit perhaps a bit of a verbal update about the communications and engagement, because that closed on the 9th of March after running for 6 weeks. So the final numbers are still coming through. We've got we've got over, it's a little bit difficult to give one number. So we've got over 460 pieces of feedback, but that feedback includes a range from individuals who've put in pieces of feedback about different questions that we've asked, right through to one piece of feedback actually capturing large amounts of feedback from a number of organisations in a workshop that we've run, or people who've worked together and provided significant online and email feedback as well. So we're working our way through that at the moment. We've got well in excess of 1,000 ideas that we're now putting together into a transport long list, and that long list will be assessed and be coming to the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee on the 1st of April for endorsement. So we're right in the thick of that at the moment. It's fantastic that we've got such a range of feedback from everybody, and we're feeling very pleased that we have hit all of the stakeholder groups who we really wanted to hit, probably with the exception of the high school children who we had wanted to be working with the prefect group from Cambridge High School. But unfortunately, the weather events took our comms and engagement and our community advisors off for that time. So we've had to postpone the work that we do. So we'll continue to work with that high school prefect group throughout the year, but they didn't end up doing specific promotion to the high school. What we did do was have newsletters into each of the school newsletters throughout Cambridge. So we were able to reach families indirectly that way. So that's perhaps a little bit about the engagement overall. In terms of progress of the work, then that continues on track. We continue to be confident that we'll be able to deliver the ideas in time for the long-term plan for the first 3 years of the program, and then those ideas from 3 to 10 and then 10 to 30 by the end of the year as well. But perhaps I'll just pause, take the paper as read and answer questions that people have.
Thank you, Katie. Roger's going to start with the first question.
Yes, thank you, Katie, and I hope that you're feeling better soon. Really exciting, the amount of feedback that we've got. The delays that we've had through the weather event and the state of emergency and other things that are coming to impede us, will that put any jeopardy on the December reporting time, final reporting time for Cambridge Connections?
No, it won't. We certainly have a tight time frame to work to throughout this year, and we are really conscious of that. But no, we are expecting to remain on track.
Good, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing this long list. Thank you.
This is probably more a question for James. Just one of the things that was flagged was around the affordability, and I understand that this, once the design and things are sorted, that will be built into future LTPs, the funding?
Yes. In the current financial strategy, there is an affordability metric. We will need to work on that.
And just to add to that, what the Strategic Policy and Planning Committee will see, Strategic Planning and Policy Committee will see on the 1st of April is the criteria to develop the shortlist, which will include the criteria around affordability and value for money. So that will obviously be a feature as we develop the transport programs.
Hi, Katie. Hey, obviously I'm sort of inside quite a lot of this stuff. A couple of comments as we get towards the end of phase 2. So have you got a plan afoot to reassess this risk register as you move into phase 3? Because I think that's, I think this approach has been, you can see the direct link to the risks which have led to mitigation actions which you have executed upon, which has helped de-risk your program, which is how this is supposed to work. So, but sort of inevitably, as you move from one phase of a project into another, you do actually need to stop and take the time to think about it again, not just let this get stale. And I would also have a similar comment on the opportunities piece. A, I commend you on even having an opportunity side of things, because people often forget about it. But B, some of those opportunities felt like we'd run out of collective ideas a wee bit, so we just put something down. So like the opportunities register in particular, I'm used to there being a lot less opportunities than there are risks. That's kind of just the nature of what we do. But as we go through that reassessment into phase, question is A, do we have it scheduled to do that reassessment for phase 3? And B, suggestion that in that opportunities piece, maybe try and hone in on it and just pick a couple of items that you can focus on that side, as opposed to such a long list. I think that would be, there are only so many hours in the day, I know. So.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. And yes, there's the short answer. So as a project team, we have a session already booked into the calendar for next week to be able to start to look at some of the lessons learned for this phase, and to then start getting into detailed planning for the next phase, which includes obviously a review of the risk register. Yes.
Great, thank you. And I guess maybe a follow-on suggestion, just that as we get closer to this being less amorphous, I would consider the point whereby we start making this risk register a little more quantitative if possible. I know that's hard to do in the real early stages, right? But just in terms of cost and schedule impact, if we can, once we get to construction, I'd expect we're going to be doing something more fully fledged, but or even through design. But as we get closer, if we can start to think about that, that is really helpful for us when we do think about LTP in terms of the sort of funding envelope we need for this going forward.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, that will start, I think, as you say, with the shortlist assessment criteria, understanding the sort of bands of cost and then value for money, and then we'll need to keep developing that further as we go through. And certainly, if we do need to be developing any separate business cases in parallel to make sure that there is something provided for in the long-term plan, then that's certainly something on our radar as well.
Right, Mayor Mike.
Thanks for the chair. It's more just a comment around the complexity of this project and its interlink with other projects or strategies, and particularly with regard, future-proof the Hamilton Waikato Metro Spatial Plan and the Ahuake, which is our community spatial plan, but also the Waipa Transport Strategy. But that future-proof Hamilton Waikato Metro Spatial Plan, I guess it's just making sure that people understand that this does not stand alone. It has to fit within and consider a whole bunch of other plans as this thing comes together. So it's just, I guess, just an understanding.
Excellent. Well, look, if there's no further questions, we'll take the recommendation that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives the report of Jenny Wilson, Senior Business Resilience and Risk Advisor, and Amber DeProse, Events and Engagement Team Leader, titled Cambridge Connections Quarterly Update on Progressive Measures of Success and Risk Profile. And thanks to Katie too for your comments. Yeah. Could I have a mover and seconder? Ian and Shane, thank you. So our next paper is the Strategic Growth Program Risk Update on page 88. And Katie, I believe you're staying online, and we also have Karen Saunders. So Karen, please come up to the front table. Thank you. And David as well. Thank you both. Yeah.
Good morning, Morena councillors. My name is Karen Saunders. I'm new here. I'm the Strategic Growth Management Program Manager. And I have David with me and also Katie online. So I joined Waipa in December last year, and I've come from Hamilton City Council, where I spent just over 10 years in the strategic growth management space, and most recently as a unit director looking after climate change, Central City and greenfield growth programs. I was also the chair of the Future Proof Priority Development Areas Working Group. And my focus when I was at Hamilton City Council was on the place-based growth delivery and planning, monitoring and reporting to support investment decisions and managing risk, which by the way, I love, and tracking benefits of growth. And that was a long journey. It took a long time for Hamilton to get there. So most of all, excuse me, my focus there was largely around bringing people together to manage risk. Thanks, David. I also led the review of Hamilton's urban growth strategy and worked with central government on infrastructure funding and financing, mostly the 290 million Peacock Housing Infrastructure Fund business case, and the implementation of that, and the $150 million Infrastructure Acceleration Fund for Central City, and making sure that the delivery of that strategic infrastructure is going to deliver the homes that were needed. So I bring all of those learnings, and there were many, from my role at Hamilton City Council to Waipa, particularly around strategically managing growth in a way that can ensure financial sustainability. Because while Waipa is growing at a smaller scale than Hamilton City, the risks are the same and the consequences are also the same, especially to the community. So the report today is quite short because I've just started, and the focus really has been on the most urgent and important things. And those two things are the short immediate need to establish what the growth assumptions are to support the long-term plan. It's really important to understand what our position is to support decision-making as you move into the long-term plan, and to ensure that all of those assumptions are audit-ready and nice and tight, I guess. And the second part is around development contributions and growth reporting. I was in a very lucky position to be with Hamilton City Council as they move through their improvement process around growth analytics and reporting. They are some of the best in the country, and it would be very good for Waipa to be working closely with them to tap into their knowledge as much as we can. So I'll leave it there and take questions, but I'm looking forward to the next risk report. I think it's in June, and it will be much more comprehensive because we would have done some work as a team on those risks.
Thank you, Karen. We have me and Mike, then Roger, and then Claire. Thank you.
Thanks through the chair. Karen, you've got a big task ahead of you. I don't know how you realise how important your job is, and the conversations that have taken place before December. And look, and I'm going to touch on, I think it's page 90, is it, or page 2 of the 3 of the report here, around the growth assumptions, which you've sort of talked a little bit about. And I mightn't have my years quite right here, but I think we're supposed to be growing at about 0.8%, and we're slightly above that at the current time. And I think I'm going to go for 2029, and it jumps up to 3.6. You know, now auditor friends have had some concerns around that. And hey, to be fair, I think many other people would have had concerns around that too, that sort of not gradual increase, but sort of pretty flat line and then a sort of ladder. So I'm really looking forward to, and I'm sure this table is, of actually testing those assumptions, because the 10-year plan is largely hung around those assumptions, and the financial risk is immense. And it's personally, I think it's one of our top risks of anything in the risk register, that those numbers are tested to either say they're correct or they need smoothing, or some advice on how realistic they are. Yeah, so yeah, I'm looking forward to following your progress.
Yes, and to give you some assurance around that, there has been some progress since this report was written, and some of the work that David's leading in response to that. So with the industrial projections, that work is underway. There's an external consultant who's an expert doing that work to test those assumptions and to bring the workings. That has been, the scope of that work's been reviewed by Audit New Zealand to make sure that it's going to meet the mark. And the same process is being done for residential assumptions as well. So there's another external agency doing that work. That work's kicked off. And we're expecting those to land around about the end of April. And so we're coming back to councillors as part of the long-term plan process in mid-May workshop. So that'll be a key workshop.
And just finally on that, I just remember a couple of papers ago, the consents are actually up compared with last year, so that we are trending. I mean, where the consents are, I don't know. Doesn't really matter, I guess, but yeah, hey, it is. We're trending in the right direction. It's really just that whole step, that stepped approach from, you know, some current trajectory to something quite different. So I'm sure there'll be movement, but we'll wait in anticipation.
Thanks, Roger.
Welcome to you. And I realise that you've only just started, and I had a whole heap of questions, which I'm actually going to put to one side and wait until you've had more time in the seat. But the area of interest that I really have is getting our growth enabled already well-defined. You know, we've got a whole heap of growth cells and we have capacity for growth that we've identified, but that capacity in our district plan is actually in the old urban density requirement of 10 to 15 per hectare. And I don't know if we've really got it clearly defined what the new growth capacity is of our growth cells, given being a tier 1 and the policy statement on urban development and what that means to us. And also how much of that capacity have we already enabled through development agreements and our own infrastructural development. And I think we've got to get a good understanding of what is already enabled before we look forward to further investment in growth for the LTP. So I'm looking forward to that greater definition of what our current growth capacity is. And again, we've also got another private plan change coming through, which is saying to us they want us to increase by another 50 hectares our gross cell capacity, and whether that's possible or necessary or not. So there's a lot of questions that are coming out of that. So look forward to your getting well settled and getting the information to us.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. And to sum up what you've said there, I'm terming that what is our growth position, as in everything you just said, what does that picture look like? Yeah. And so we're tracking towards, the team are working on that now, and we're tracking towards that May workshop to be in a position to be able to share that in terms of how we're tracking what's infrastructure ready, what's in the pipeline, and what's actually being delivered. Thank you.
It's clear.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm pretty excited to have you on our team and the work that you're going to do. Yeah, I agree with everyone that's already spoken that this is, a really important aspect of Waipa's work. So I just wanted to understand, well, I've got 3 things I wanted to mention. The first one is the National Policy Statement for Urban Development Requirements, and you're saying that you're going to work on ensuring there's sufficient development capacity. So my experience as an RMA commissioner, when we've relied on reports of this capacity, is they become out of date almost by the time they're published. So I just urge you that rather than relying on perhaps data sets that are sort of backwards looking, that you might consider using more up-to-date ones, you know, whether it's local real estate agents or other up-to-the-minute information, that so that from an elected member point of view, we want that report obviously to give an accurate picture, but is not so out of date, that we can continue using it for at least 6 months and rely on it. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the data sources that you would use, but I'd be really keen to see if we can get stuff that's more current. And then you also mentioned in your report about development contributions, reporting and analytics, and the intention to have a centre of excellence with Hamilton City. So my understanding from what I've picked up from comments previously is that Waipa has quite a different system of development contributions to Hamilton City. So I'd just like to test with you that there is sufficient common ground, that there's, I suppose, sufficient shared systems and approaches that it would be useful, or are they, they poles apart, or is there a chance to work together and we'd get something useful out of it and Hamilton City as well? And then lastly, it's about the sustainability of growth. And you said that Hamilton City had done a lot on that, which I'm really pleased that we may benefit from that. I've been really concerned that Hamilton City has been listed as one of those growth councils that is committing their communities to long-term debt because they can't pay for it. Yeah. So does that mean it's been resolved? I hope so. I suspect it might be because there's been a particular focus on ensuring the financing or the construction of infrastructure for growth has been covered off, but that it's the ongoing looking after it, maintaining it and using it, that formula perhaps needs some tweaking. Yeah, so those are the three big questions I have, and I'm looking forward to you being able to answer them all. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I saw David taking notes of what those were.
That's why I'm here.
So the first one was around the national, the urban development capacity.
And current data.
And current data. So some of the actual most useful data is relationships with developers and understanding what their pipeline is and reporting on that in a way that is not necessarily like this is going to happen, but here's the intel that we've got, understanding that it can move and shift. So adding that to your pipeline of growth gives you a more well-rounded picture. And then, of course, continuing the reporting on how things are tracking on a regular basis. I understand there's a quarterly growth report that tracks what's happening with the consents, etc. So it's adding that plus what's in the pipeline, and then getting visibility of that longer term growth pipeline and whether each individual decision that you're making is how that's going to impact that or not. What's the second one there, David?
Development contributions, working with Hamilton City,
yes.
test is there sufficient common ground to benefit from that?
Thank you, David. So the one around that is that with the reform coming up with development levies, so that is going to prescribe nationally how development levies, are done. So that's something that's hanging around on the horizon that we need to take into consideration as we work towards this, because it will change how things work for everyone. But the Hamilton City Council has particular models with algorithms, etc., that depending on, and this analysis needs to be done, but depending on the data that goes in, how can we use their machine and their expertise to turn it into something usable for Waipa? Yeah, that's the question that remains.
The third one was sustainability of growth, and comment about while we may benefit from Hamilton City's work, they're committed their communities to long-term debt.
Oh,
If I captured it correctly.
This is growth paying for growth.
Yeah.
Growth, not necessarily paying for growth. So there is a piece of work alongside the short-term immediate need to understand our growth position for the LTP. There's another piece of work around our growth strategy and refreshing that. And in that piece of work, that's where we need to work with councillors to understand what is your direction on the trade-offs of growth and the levers that you can pull in response to growth. The growth strategy has been very good in the past for Waipa, I believe, with this way it's set out with the sequencing. But now coming into this new environment of reforms, it needs to just shift up to being a little bit more strategic and ensuring that it can meet the needs that you've set out. So that piece of work, we're just rescoping that at the moment, and we'll bring that back to councillors for a discussion and your input.
Oh, look, thanks. I love all your answers and I look forward to, getting that piece of work brought to elected members. And I also just wanted to say that you mentioned that you'd done work on the benefits of growth. It'd be great for us, to maybe be presented with those findings as well, outcomes, because I think we've sort of been beaten around the heads about the negative aspects of growth, but there are benefits to it, and it'd be really good for us, to understand that in as much depth as possible too. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thanks for those good questions, Claire, and well done, Karen. I'd just like to invite Steph to make a couple of comments. Yeah.
Thanks, Carol. And thanks, Karen. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have Karen on board and working in this whole space, providing really exceptional support through the team leadership and that program management approach to growth, because as we can see, it goes across the whole organisation. So firstly, I want to mahi to Karen and the great work that she's doing. In response to your question, Claire, just to sort of come up a level perhaps to think, so Hamilton City Council obviously having initial conversations about this, but we're having at an operational and executive level and operational conversations about the benefits for the future-proof councils around having shared centre of excellence, which may mean you have different policy suites that are implemented by each council at a governance level according to the needs of that district. But there is a significant amount of data and analytics, modelling, policy and reporting, which there's no point, particularly the three big councils, all doing that separately. That's cost and lack of efficiency, which is exactly the antithesis of what we're trying to do in local government, right? So we might say that it might play out differently in terms of end outcomes for growth in place, but what it will do is ensure that we can line up how we are actually running the back engine of that. And that will play through for future-proof in terms of enabling much better sub-regional modelling and being able to ensure a consistent narrative across the future-proof councils. Now, and while we've got our Renee in the room from Audit New Zealand, what I would expect Audit New Zealand to be asking of us, because we were obviously, our position last year was that it's not just about Waipa District. We face growth pressures from across the border in Hamilton. We're looking at that boundary change, for example, in the southern Hamilton area, that we have to really start to get to a point where we're able to demonstrate that sub-regional story very clearly backed up by clear data and evidence. And if that's tested against three councils, Waikato, Hamilton City and ourselves, that's the ideal place I'd like us to get to. And I'm pretty sure that my colleagues at CE level are in the same boat. There's 20 people in Greg Carston's team and the development team in Hamilton City Council. We can't build that kind of resource, nor should we in this council alone. But it's there and it's a resource that we can share. The future-proof group itself is also looking to see how it can work much more collaboratively into that space to inform spatial planning and decisions of the future-proof councils and informing the Merrill collective group as well. So I guess I'm assuring you that yes, while policy might play out differently in place, development contributions, etc., we actually all require the same engine in behind or very similar engine in behind. And we do know that that has been a deficit area in our organisation, and hence the governance questions about what are we doing about it, and hence we've appointed Karen and we're starting to get a handle on what that could look like. We had conversations as recently as last week, Wayne and myself, with Tony Coots about what he needs to be able to do his job better, and this is working towards that outcome. So hopefully that's useful, and I hope Renee hears that too, so that over the next couple of years, as we start to think about audit of the growth work, Audit New Zealand have a lot more confidence in what we're doing.
Thank you, Steph. And Monty had a question.
Which leads perfectly to my question. If you'll allow me to ask Renee, if you have any comments. The report states that you have had the scope of the works on the industrial growth modelling and maybe the residential growth modelling passed by you. So just, invite you to, do you have any comments on that, on your level of comfort? Because it's not that far away before we're going to be asked to issue an audit opinion on our long-term plan. This will be about this time next year, I imagine, something like that. So how are you feeling?
Sorry, there we go. Thank you for the question. So we've already embarked on this journey with management. I need to be very conscious of the line between being, really independent and coming in to see, what has been done by council versus being really involved in the process. So there's a bit of a line for me to just be sure that I keep that. I did have a really quick look at the scope. I didn't really agree or clear the scope of the work that's been done. I had a really quick look through it and, just made a couple of suggestions on that. So for me, it's really important to stay independent in this process. At the end of the day, we need to come and audit the decisions, the assumptions that's been made, but just as important on the assumptions is how the financial numbers, overlay that, and that things like that step up percentages and that all makes sense. So in terms of any assumptions that's being developed for us, it's just really important to have really good support and, understand the decision-making process without being part of the decision-making process, if that makes sense. So as we go through this journey, very happy to look at things, but just please bear in mind that nothing has been cleared or signed off or, in a formal way. We haven't started to bill you. So that might be an indication of, that the work that we're doing at the moment is just to kind of start understanding this journey that everybody is going through.
Can I just have a follow-up to that, if I may? And I hear what you're saying. I completely understand that you're the independent auditors. You can't be part of the decision-making process. But between the growth team and you, is there anticipation of some staged approach where there are stages where Audit New Zealand says, yes, those growth assumptions will stand up, or do we have to wait to right at the end of all our long-term planning, financial planning, and then to be put potentially in the difficult situation we were in the last long-term plan where we find out very late that Audit New Zealand are uncomfortable? So is there anticipation of steps, and if not, could there be?
We would like to do this process much different than last time and be involved much earlier. But that said, we need to be involved at the right time. We also have to consider the time and the fees. So we need to come in at the right time where, you've gone through the first steps of, deciding on, for example, the assumptions. So not too early, but definitely earlier than, previous rounds of LTPs. And I think that's just a symptom of how things are developing. We are doing every single year or every 3 years cycle that we are auditing LTPs, things change. And there's usually better ways of doing it for the next round. So planning to do that.
Sorry, just want to add, there are already discussions with Renee and her team about how we could do that. So the conversation started, we just don't have anything firm yet.
And I think James wanted to make a comment as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, Councillor Montgomery. We're absolutely clear that we require proof to supply to audit. I mean, my biggest concern and issue around that is the same as yours, is we had to wait very late in the process to receive audits numbers and their disagreement. So as Renee's articulated, that they want to work closer with us up front and we want to work closer up front, and there was other issues around new people coming in and the like. So I'm certainly not pointing fingers at audit. I'm just saying that it is a key risk area of our long-term plan audit, and we have to have the appropriate level of proof. At the same time, we need audit to engage with us early so that if our proof is not sufficient, we know in advance. So that's kind of where, as the CFO, where my head is on this.
Look, final comment from me. I like what I've heard, and I don't know who this rests with, George, our CFO, Karen, but going forward, I think we need to keep an eye on this. And to your point, you're not billing us yet. If that's the impediment, that's not a good enough reason. If we need to engage the auditors on a stepped program on this item, given its significance from last time, I would like us to do it. So I'll just leave that hanging, and maybe we can have that reported back. Probably here, maybe SPMP, I don't know.
Yeah. Just to clarify, so that program of work sits with the LTP project as Kirsty is the business owner, and there's a co-sponsorship arrangement between the C and the Mayor. So that plan will come through the LTP reporting and the risk management, just to clarify.
Great discussions. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, David. So I'll move the resolution that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives the report of Karen Saunders, Program Manager, Strategic Growth Management, titled Strategic Growth Program Risk Update. Could I have a mover and seconder? Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Roger. So we're running a little ahead of time. I'm thinking what we might do, if people are okay, is take the LTP paper with Melissa, because I think that's quite a nice segue after having just talked about growth, and then we'll break for morning tea. So welcome, Melissa.
Good morning. Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the project risks for the 25-34 or 27-37 long-term plan, sorry. There are 3 risks identified as very high post mitigation that are detailed in the report. I do just want to focus on 2 of them, noting that the one around community expectations was reported on for the last meeting. So the first one there is the one around lack of resourcing and reliance on key staff. So one of the key mitigations that is, particularly in response to this project risk, but also applies to a number of other project risks, is around the reset of the project structure, the governance structure, and to provide a decision-making framework. So the idea of that is to provide clearer oversight and to strengthen accountability for those decisions that are made for the project. But it also helps to support better alignment across not just the long-term plan, but across other key kind of organisational projects back into the long-term plan. And then the other key risk is around legislative changes. Obviously, we know that there are lots of reform coming out of central government that will definitely have an impact on this long-term plan. So what we have done in response to that is to set up, I guess, a kind of a component of the foundations work stream focusing on reform that will have an impact on the long-term plan. That key piece of work is in its infancy, but we are very mindful of the changes that are going to impact this long-term plan. We're expecting the system improvement bill, which will be one of the key ones that will impact this project, to come into force around mid-year, if not beforehand. So we'll just need to keep monitoring that in terms of the timeframes and ensuring that those changes are appropriately given effect to through this piece of work.
Thanks, Melissa. Roger.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. And I thought it was a really big help to have that list of the current legislative pieces of work that are in the mill now and what the impact could be. And it really is going to mean a totally different picture, isn't it, when that comes through. And it's a shame that we're not getting any further definition by central government when they intend to push buttons on those things for their second and third readings. That would really have helped because that amendment bill that you're talking about, I mean, that's been being thrown around for the last 6 months, pretty much, hasn't it? And we're still waiting for it. So, but it's very helpful having that chart of all those pieces of legislation and how those are going to impact us. So thank you for that.
Yes, Claire.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. I just wanted to test the sort of residual risk rating that you're giving this, which I understand is still very high risk. Is that right? That I'm looking at the, yes. Even though the program manager has been appointed? Yeah. And so why hasn't the extra resourcing going into the project through that program manager not been able to reduce it even down to high risk? Yeah, it seems a bit unusual.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just for clarification, are you talking about the lack of resourcing, reliance on key staff risk?
Yes, that's right. I'm looking at the appendix on page 100.
So I
Yeah,
guess if you think about the project governance structure, it is made up of quite a number of people on exec that are also involved in other key processes, pieces of work across the organisation. And so it is quite a challenging one to mitigate down to a lower level. But that's exactly why it's important for us to get those, that governance structure, revisit that and the decision-making framework fully in place to make sure that, I guess there's a common understanding around who's making what decisions and when, and the expectations of those. So, yeah.
Just to add to that, that you referenced the program manager who has only been with us a matter of weeks. So there are changes. Part of the initial phase was discovery process, so engaging with people across the organisation, gathering feedback about what is working well, where do we need to make improvements. The focus has been on, as has been mentioned within the report and by Melissa, a reset looking at that governance framework. And so there are changes that have already been made, but it is a process of continuous improvement. So you will start to see those changes taking effect. And my expectation is that we will be revisiting the risk assessment on an ongoing basis.
oh, thanks for that. And then I presume that governance review, will that ever become back to elected members, or is that just an internal thing at a management?
It is more of an internal thing.
Yeah, okay. And then I also noted that the severe weather event recovery, divert staff, yeah, so that's on page 101 right at the bottom. Yeah, that's still in a nice green colour. Yeah, so is that something because you haven't been able to sort of reassess that at the moment? Because I also would imagine that that could also impact on the LTP timeframes too.
This risk is more around in response to the staff that may need to, divert their attention to the recovery phase. When this risk was drafted, it was unlikely that any of those staff would also be heavily involved in the long-term plan. But obviously we'll keep monitoring that as the recovery work progresses.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Look, this is a really important piece of work, and I appreciate it's being done in a context where there's a lot of changes and uncertainty. So, for me, this sitting as a very high risk project, I think is appropriate. And thank you for the way you've written the report. I think it's really clear on what are the new risks and also what's being done around each one. So, thank you for your work on that. Do we have any further questions, Ian? Yeah.
I'm going to get a little button and I can just press it and it'll say the same thing. Once again, yeah, there you go. Thanks, Mike. It's a little difficult to see what happened in the quarter. So same comment, right? So it's like, I think this all makes sense. It looks good. It's a thorough piece of work, but being able to see what changed in the quarter is the most important thing rather than it being a static piece. Particularly around the mitigation actions, because that's the only thing we can control. So, and again, I don't necessarily, this is not some sort of slavish list that you have to, the only thing you ever do all day long is, mitigation actions on your risk register. However, if it's well put together and this looks well put together, the reality is actually a lot of what you're doing every day is mitigation to risk action. So it's really helpful if we can see what's going on there in both directions.
Thank you. We'll take that feedback on board.
Kia ora, welcome back everyone. So we're now going to move into the audit fee proposal for the financial year and the audit engagement letter, and welcome James and Thomasy. Thank you.
Morning, councillors. First of all, for those that haven't met, can I introduce Tommy, who's our new Yolanda, our new finance manager. So Tommy's been on with us for about a month now. As we work through towards the end of the year, Yolanda will be focused her time on the annual report and audit, and also in terms of the transition of Waikato Water Limited from finance. So Tommy will be focused on the LTP and running the finance management. So a nice orderly transition as we transition through the remainder of the year. So first of all, the audit fee proposal for the financial year and engagement letter, that's a relatively procedural issue, and Risk Assurance Committee has the authority. It's one of the few authorities that has to delegate the signing by the Mayor of the fee proposal and also of the audit engagement letter. I do want to note one point for that requires changing under the recommendation, and that says receives the report of Tommaso Rossi, Manager Title Audit Plan for the 25-26 audit. The actual correct title of this report is Audit Fee Proposal for the Financial Year ending 30th of June 2026 and Audit Engagement Letter for the 26 to 28 period. So that will be corrected. I want to take the report as read. As I mentioned, it's quite a procedural report, and I'm conscious our auditors are here and we're a bit limited on time, so I'd like to maximise that time and open up to questions.
James, we might just let Renee just say a couple of words, if that's okay, just to give some context. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as James already stated, these are the audit engagement letter. So the audit engagement letter works in 3-year rotations. So that this next one up is now for the financial year 2026 to the financial year 2028. It is a standard engagement letter, so there's nothing, out of the ordinary. All the councils have the same engagement letter. You will see the objectives of the engagement as well as all the responsibilities from auditor's side and council side. Just on the fee letter, it's also for the 3-year cycle, but we've only set the fee for the first year for 2026 because of this changing landscape. We'll revisit that after this audit. The hours have been kept the same as the previous 3-year cycle, so we haven't moved on the hours, and our rates have increased by 3%. Although you won't see that if you compare that to the previous year. So compared to the previous year, there was a bit of recovery in the audit for 2025. So if you compare the 2025 fee to the 2026 budgeted fee, there's a little bit of a decrease in there. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks. My question, I'm not sure if it should be to your team, James, or to Renee, but just that I'm picking up on the bottom of page 112 that the increased audit effort, occurs through, multiple iterations and error correction, things like that. So I just want to understand, how can we reduce any efficiencies so that audit hours are as low as practicable, and so any rework or resampling, is minimised or avoided, that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm conscious of, the significant cost of it. So yeah, how can we be the most efficient? Or are we being the most efficient?
Yeah, from our side, I can speak from our side, Claire, is we've obviously got to be very well prepared, which the roles and responsibilities are clearly outlined in the engagement process. I think my team did a really good job actually in minimising the audit, because we had a revaluation of the assets, and so I'm just trying to remember back to the fee breakdown, Renee, but a significant portion of it was due to the revaluation and reconfirming some of those values, and that was probably quite a large percentage of it. But point taken, Councillor Claire, and it's certainly something we look to optimise. I know I don't sign that off. I recommend it to Carol, and I don't know if you want to comment, Carol, but we both thought it was fair.
Yes, good scrutiny, and Balance believed it was fair. Yeah. Yeah, Mike. Yeah.
Thank you through the chair. I'm just going to keep pushing on that then of what Councillor St Pierre said. So, I mean, one thing is, so you've sort of said only 1 year, which sort of concerns me a little bit. The other thing is my expectation, I guess, of your firm would be how AI is going to positively impact the reduction of this, not the increasing of this. Moving forward, that would be an expectation I think would be fair and reasonable. And I understand why we paid more last year. And my question is, as we hopefully become more efficient, is this fixed if we do less hours? Is there a reduction in the fee?
Thank you, Mayor Mike. So 3 questions. The 1 year fee is because of the waters situation. So the audit is going to change in the next year. So there is some work being done by the Auditor General, by the specialist team to see what that landscape will look like after, waters has transferred. AI, definitely, we've got a specialist team working on that. Our systems, and I've been, just in the couple of years that I've been with the office, there's been quite a bit of improvement and work on that. So that's definitely on the radar. I do know of clients where there's a credit to them if there's less hours used. It does happen. It doesn't happen a lot, but it is on the cards if that is the situation, yes.
Just to set expectations, we have a very big event happening 1st of July. And I suspect the audit involvement might be more than less. So just to set the expectations. In addition, it's a really good question you asked, Mayor Mike, is I'd expect, and maybe it's some guidance, that our audit fees going forward decrease because the scope of the work required is we're losing about 0.7 billion of water infrastructure assets, right? So I'd expect the scope to be much smaller. And I'm guessing you guys are on the same page, awaiting guidance from OAG as well.
And then just one overarching statement, which has nothing to do with you folks or really us, but there is increasing talk at LGNZ conferences, etc., and pressuring the government of not a you thing, but the immense cost to councils, just in general, of an audit on the ratepayer. So that's something I hopefully LGNZ will continue to sort of push. Yeah.
Yes.
Just as the new guy, are there other auditors and did we get a comparable quote?
My understanding is that the OAG appoint the auditor, and I'm just looking to James to confirm that. Yeah.
Yes, they do. My understanding is we can, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Renee, is we can approach OAG to change auditors if we request that. No.
It's not like in a normal corporate where you go out and get competitive quotes. Your auditor is appointed, and my understanding is it's only under very rare circumstances that the OAG would agree to change auditors. Yeah. All right. Well, look, I'll pass the recommendation that we receive the reported Thomas O'Rossi Manager Finance titled Audit Fee Proposal for the financial year ended 30th of June 26 and Audit Engagement Letter for the 26 to 28 audit period. And we note that Mayor Mike will sign those 2 letters. So thank you, Mayor Mike and Claire. Yeah. The next item we have is the Audit New Zealand Audit Report to Council, and that's on page 131. And Thomaso, are you going to give a brief intro, or James? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so this is the Outstanding Management Reports matters. So just to remind councillors that we did receive an unmodified audit for our 24-25 annual report, which obviously is very good news. And I do want to note within this procedure that we've had a change in how it works, and I think it's both good and bad. And the good thing is there's a separate report to governance at a high level that audit compile in terms of their management report on matters that went well, not so well. As you'll see in that report, they were very happy, particularly with our financial statements in the proof, which is positive. Couple of little comments around some individual key metrics and the likes. And then as management, we received a very detailed report, which we received on the 27th of February. We're working our way through that to feedback to audit. That's a lot along the lines of continuous improvements of area of focus, but what council will receive is a summary of that and verification independently from audit that what we're receiving matches as well. So on that note, I'd just like to take the report as read and feel free to ask any questions of our auditor or us.
Well, Roger?
Yes, thanks. Thank you, James. One of the changes, as I think you mentioned, is that the outstanding items that are in our report are no longer going to be commented on by the audit team.
Next report. We'll cover that off in the next report.
Oh, you're going to do it in the next report?
There's the outstanding matters report after this, Councillor Gordon. So can we cover that off there?
We will cover that then.
Yep.
Renee, did you want to make a comment?
Sorry, I can maybe just clarify that, and it might come up in the next segment, but we will be focused on the current year's annual audit and any matters and findings that come out of the audit. So you might see the same ones coming through year after year, but keeping track of all the old ones is basically what we've done in the past. We're not actively trying to keep track of all the ones that's been raised in prior reports.
We'll talk about the process of that in the next report.
Correct.
Right, thank you. Claire?
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to comment on the change in format. I think it's really great. You know, I've never been able to know whether or not what auditors thought about, I suppose, the judgment calls that are made, but it's really great to see that the work that the Waipa team has done is completely balanced. Yeah, so we might have other opinions on that, but here it is in black and white. Yeah, and those other things that are reported on, so we never used to have any visibility on that. So yeah, I think it's a big improvement and great to see that. Thanks.
Anne?
I think this is fairly straightforward. So looking at page 143, in terms of the items that were acceptable from this year's report, so the service performance reporting prepared by management complies with accounting standards, and the second one, they roll forward presumably into our open actions going forward, and that will be the basis of the reporting of getting acceptable up to good.
It's a very good question because acceptable to me means it's acceptable. The open items item is the criteria is there, it requires urgent action and attention. So we've got some significant issue there that's potentially impacting on the way we report and the integrity of the financial statements. So I actually think acceptable means that we're acceptable. Is there room for improvement? Yes. Does that answer your question?
But not on the to-do list right now, perhaps.
Correct. Okay. Because we as you'll see in the next report we have a number of items on there that are still in the urgent category. Yeah, that
makes sense.
Okay.
Having said that, probably just to provide some assurance around those two things that are acceptable, we are making sure that we keep those in mind through this next annual report, in particular the supporting evidence around that roading measure.
Yeah.
Questions?
Just following on from that. So these acceptables drop off our radar though. They're on your radar, but for us, we'd have to go back and look at this, which is fine because I accept you. Acceptable is acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy with that. So that was all I was musing in my head. That's what you could see me thinking about.
I mean, we are in a risk forum. I'm assuming councillors' risk appetite is acceptable, is okay, given the other risks in the organisation at the moment. Would that be a fair assumption? Excellent. Aspirational, love it.
All right. Well, look, I'll move the recommendation that the Risk and Assurance Committee receive the report of Thomas O'Rossi, Manager Finance, titled Audit New Zealand Report to the Council 24-25. Could I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Claire. And thank you. So our next paper now is the outstanding management report matters, which we did sort of touch a little bit on earlier. But over to you, James and Tomaso.
Yeah, thanks very much, Madam Chair. Yes, so as people have hinted, this does, the change in approach does feed into a potential issue for us in outstanding open matters. And clearly the whole reason we provide this report is for assurance for the elected members that what audit have identified, we're closing out effectively, efficiently and the likes. So we've come up with a process, and thanks George for working with us on this as well, George and the team, where in the first instance, we will go through the detailed management report, feedback to audit, and then you'll see this in June, is there's actually 5 items that we think are closed, subject to that management report out of the 12 that are open at the moment. And so what will happen is we'll hopefully be able to verify those, bring those back to council, to RAC in June and close those off. The other items, in terms of as we think we close those out, if they're not covered in the scope of the current year's audit, we won't get audit commentary on them. So we're going to work as the first line of defence with our internal auditor to verify internally, but with an external lens. And second, if we don't have the skill set internally, we'll work with our audit partners, Jade and Aaron, to close that out as well, for particularly any of the very urgent ones, mainly around vested assets and anything to do with infrastructure, because that's where those are complex and where most of your risks sit around systems talking to each other and level of size of the issue. So that would be the approach. And as I mentioned, and I'll close off, is of the 12 open items, we expect to close out 5 and making significant progress on 7 of them. So I'll close at the end and take questions.
Thanks, James. Monty?
Just to get clarity on this, the open outstanding items from previous management reports, audit are no longer going to be looking at. Is it a management call whether they're closed from now on, which you will bring to RAC presumably?
Yeah. So if it's been in the scope of the current year's audit, which you can pretty much guarantee anything to do with vested assets and infrastructure and working capital and revaluations will be, and we think we have enough evidence, we will bring that evidence and ask and make a recommendation to RAC to close that out. That would happen in June. And then for any that are not covered in the current year's audit and we can't substantiate via the audit report, we will then ask our internal auditor and PwC to recommend to council after conducting the work to close it out. Does that answer your question, Mike?
It does. And just a specific follow-up, if it is something that's in the current scope of the current audit, will the auditors specifically say, yeah, that outstanding item is closed? Yeah, cool. Perfectly understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger.
No, my question has been answered with the supplementary information from Monty. Thank you.
Excellent. So James, just to be really clear, this committee will still see and have visibility of all of those items, whether or not they're on the audit one, until they're closed.
We will not take anything off that list without visibility from the elected members and approval. In addition to that, obviously, one thing I missed is we will need to put new things potentially from what's been identified from this current audit. But as you've seen, it's pretty good.
Great, thank you. Sorry, yes.
I was going to say mild curiosity, but I don't think it's really mild curiosity. Out of the 5 that you think we think will probably close, how do the 2 urgent items factor into those? Are we going to be able to close them out this year, or are they carrying forward?
Such a good question. I'd have been disappointed if someone hadn't asked it, because it's obviously putting us on the hot seat here. I'm going to use some experience here. As when I was at Western Bay Regional Council in here, those items tend to always be on your risk register, because those are where the biggest risks sit for the organisation and the most manual pieces in terms of the transition from infrastructure to finance and the different uses of our systems. So infrastructure is all about capital delivery, work programs, asset management plans, we're about revaluations, depreciations, vesting of assets, and it is where the break is. So I actually think for councils, I would want to see that continue on there and be monitored. I take the point about the urgentness. You have seen in the management report that we've done a good job of it this year. But it's something that you can never take your eye off when you've got a $2.7 billion infrastructure asset business, because it is the areas that tend to have the most moving parts and your biggest risk. And you'll always find that in the audit plan as well, right, Renee?
Renee. Thank you. Madam Chair, there's one thing I can maybe just to put it into perspective. If I look at the current list, it's only the first item on there that I see is coming from 2020 that might be, as we would say, not in scope going forward. And there's a good reason for that. It's because in those years we did a lot of control testing. And you can see that first one has got to do with a control test that we would have done in previous years. We've changed our approach quite a bit in the last couple of years to be more substantial based audit testing, which means all of the other ones below them, I can basically see that that is part of what we do in our normal audit. So from my perspective, most of them will be addressed via the process. It might just be where there's a specific control test, but because we're not doing control testing anymore at this point, not planning for this year, that it might not be under the radar for us to go and test if that finding has been closed.
There's actually a column missing from this report now that I look at it, because priorities, there's what's the risk there, right? Just in line with the conversation, the questions you've asked, Councillor Campson, we've got priority. Why is it a priority? Is it more riskier than something else? And that's what I've articulated. So we might just have to have a look at improving that report to actually quantify what the risk is, because having read the management report is, it's clear from the management report from audit that there's not super risk around it, but you wouldn't know that.
Great. Well, look, we'll take the recommendation that the Risk and Assurance Committee receive the report of Thomas O'Rossi, Manager Finance, titled Outstanding Management Report Matters. Could I have a move and seconder, please? Thanks, Shane. Thanks, me, Mike. So we'll now move to the next paper, which is Strategic Internal Audit Reporting, Waters Transition, page 152, and invite George to come and speak with us. And we also have Aaron and Jade as well.
All right, so as you know, PwC have been appointed to manage in an agile way to provide assurance around our Waters Transition Program. We presented the first report through to Council on the 25th of February around their findings. So this paper is really a follow-up to RAC in terms of providing commentary around what we are putting in place in response to the recommendations. And that is on page 154 of Diligent. So that's really my summary. If there's any questions around that, I don't know, Aaron, if you want to add anything further.
Sure, George. George, we take the report as read. We're doing sort of a real-time review. Obviously, that review was over the setup of the project. And subsequent to that, I've been attending sort of the weekly project team meetings, and note that the risk and issues are openly discussed in this forum, and the follow-up actions are taken to address those risk and issues that have been raised. And there is a program plan in place, and progress has been checked. And so the actions that are outlined in the report, I have actively seen them being addressed and actioned.
Right, thank you. We've got Ian and then Claire and then Roger.
Hi, folks. Got it. a couple of questions here, actually. So I'm looking at page 154, the key actions. So in terms of the detailed program planning that you just mentioned, Aaron, there was a comment in your own report around tracking it against a baseline correctly. Now, so my question is, how far does that program extend? Is it just to the 1st of July or is it beyond? And have we actually started tracking against that baseline yet? Because I've looked at my watch this morning and it seems to be March.
Yeah, correct. Yes, we are tracking against it. So we're doing RAG status against each of the program tasks, if you like, and raising up what that forward plan looks like for the next month at the weekly meetings. Some of it is difficult in terms of RAG status because we are so heavily dependent on Waikato Waters in relation to some of the tasks. So it's about when that does happen, us then liaising with Waikato Waters around, what is, I guess, driving the status of that, or a delayed time that we might not be completely in control of. Does that answer your question, or was there another part to it?
Not quite, no.
What was the next part?
I want to follow up. So, well, the second part was a baseline. So have you actually frozen the dates when
Yes.
things need to happen, and then you are reporting against those frozen dates? So if things push to the right, it's very clear that things are pushing to the right.
Yes, yep. So we have frozen it. We have another column now within our program plan, revised date or whatever that might be.
Good stuff. And then following on from that, in terms of the contingency plans, where are we at with those? Because the fact that we're still developing contingency plans, assuming this schedule goes only as far as the 1st of July currently, we're getting a wee bit late in the day not to have a contingency plan.
Yeah, so there's two parts to this. So there's one around Waikato Waters completing their own contingency planning, and some of what we can respond to is dependent upon what their contingency plans are, if they have expectations upon council. So we're just waiting on visibility of that. Internally, we have had a contingency planning workshop, which has identified a number of things that we need to consider based upon what we know. To summarise that contingency planning workshop, fundamentally, everything is in place for the transfer on the 1st of July. The contingencies that may occur is if some lower level operational readiness is not quite in place. So it might be, for example, that we may need to pay staff for one more month because that system may not be fully stood up. However, that's not going to stop transition or be a showstopper. It's an operational matter that we will need to do post 1st of July. So in terms of our program post 1st of July, we are starting to get a bit more of a handle on some of those items now. And we'll know more probably in April, where Waikato Waters will give us a very good steer around some of the readiness, in particular in regards to these systems.
I mean, look, everything that I've seen of what you and your team are doing on our side of this is very good. And WWL been dragging the chain a wee bit, right? And I understand that there's a move on that now, but we are at amber, not green. And I would not be waiting for their contingency plan to make our contingency plans, because everything they've done to date does not suggest that, hey, look, if they come good by 1st of July, that's great. But I wouldn't be making any bets on that right now.
Yeah, I note that. So we are definitely doing as much as we can with the information that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Claire.
Yeah, thanks. And it is those contingency plans that I've got a particular interest in as well, because I noticed on page 154 that the intention is to report them on a bi-monthly status cycle. Yeah, that to me suggests I do, that can be ambiguous. Bi-monthly, it can be twice a month, or it can be once every 2 months. I think at the moment we're actually getting it once every 2 months, and I would question whether or not that needs to be a bit more frequent, given how close we are, yeah, and how closely we need to monitor it, that's all.
So I'm happy to more frequently report through to council if that's requested. So our next formal status report would be the council meeting in April. I'm more than happy to bring a status report through to council at the end of March if that is valuable. I probably would hesitate a little bit at the moment. You're probably not going to get a huge amount more information from me. April would make a lot more sense, and that's when Waikato Waters 2 would be giving some stronger signals around their operational readiness.
Yeah, I think I'd be comfortable with an April reporting thing, but then maybe reviewing that and if necessary, moving it to more frequent. There's so much writing on this, and I think being rigid about reporting cycles when it doesn't reflect the reality, I think, yeah, we do need to be flexible, I think. But I am encouraged actually by what progress has been made, and I do highly value the oversight that PwC are providing on this as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. I think if we leave that with George and Steph to work out frequency of reporting, one of the things that Roger and I spoke about with Aaron and Jade on Friday was about the escalation path, if they're seeing emerging risks, because obviously our next committee meeting is not till June. So we've talked about what those escalation paths of coming through Roger and I, coming through to Steph and through to me and Mike, if there's key strategic risks that are coming up that would compromise the project. So yeah, I think it's something, there's a very tight timeline, and we're all focused on trying to deliver that. Thank you. So Roger.
Thank you. You've just, it's all right. Doesn't matter as long as somebody asks the question on the table. But yes, you're right. We had a good discussion about escalation because the fact that our next keep saying ordinary risk, so excuse me, sorry, is not for another 3 months. There has to be some process in place that allows you to register any other concerns or further recommendations. But one thing, with the exception, of course, of the contingencies which were affected by the recovery and the staff going out and doing other things. But in terms of your recommendations, you did say in our little discussion that you're quite satisfied that those recommendations have been well carried forward by the staff and mitigated. So that's good. But I'm pleased that we've got that escalation established. So we hope that we don't have to hear from you in the next 3 months, but that would be great. Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes.
Just a clarification, I just want to just get concrete what we just agreed to there around Clee's question. So April, it's coming back. We've got May and June. So I just want to, because there's obviously not one of these until just before July. So
Kia ora, Mike. What George and I'll go away and have a think about what that escalation process is in the meantime, and because the exec get reported on this every week. And so off the back of that, we can then think about the escalation to governance and who the appropriate people are to do that too, or and how we make that as efficient as possible given the timeframe. So it's a really good nexus in time, and we'll come back to you on that and let all of the RAC, including Carol, obviously, know.
yeah, so that's what my last question was. Does it come back to RAC outside of or another subcommittee or committee or council?
Yeah, I think given the timing of it, it needs to come up via council, whether that's to council itself or a committee.
Subcommittee.
Yeah.
I think it's a subcommittee at this point in time, just so that we have, so we get the escalation right, so we can get some decisions as quickly as we need them, but RAC and council get the transparency that they need in the right order, Mike. So we'll work on that, come back to you. It's a really good point in time to highlight that. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
Roger.
I think just adding on to that, it's well worth mentioning that you're actually currently attending all of the transition meetings. So you're practically here all the time, if you like, keeping an eye on things, not physically, but
Okay, great. Well, look, we'll capture that action, and so if I can move the recommendation, and I've got the wrong one here. No, it is the right one. Sorry, that the Risk and Assurance Committee received the report of Hare George, Internal Assurance Advisor, titled Strategic Internal Audit Reporting Waters Transition. Yeah. Could I have a mover and seconder? Thanks, Mayor Mike and Claire. Thank you. All right, so we'll now move to the capital program update on page 163. And if I could invite Jean to come forward. Yeah.
Morena tātou, good morning everybody. So I'm Evelisa Wright, Group Manager Service Delivery, and I'm here with Jean de Villiers as Capital Projects Manager. So I always get his title wrong, hence the hesitation, and so I look at him for affirmation because I call him wonderful titles.
That's okay.
And
Master of all.
So in terms of, we'd like to take the report as read. However, I would like to provide the following summary of key points. But firstly, I've been asked, and I seem to have a trend with this. I have a minor administration correction to the recommendation because it doesn't match the title of the report. So this time the name's perfect, but the title of the report needs to be corrected in terms of the additional words in terms of capital program update, service delivery and community services as at 31st of January 2026. So I just wanted to clarify that for the recommendation. So this report provides an update on the capital program for service delivery and community services risks, noting this is for 7 months as at 31st of January 2026. Following the approval of our 2025-34 LTP on the 18th of July 2025. So as James has already advised, during the risk management update, the capital program and rate of delivery will look different after the 8-month financial forecast. So, and that will be presented to the F&C committee this month. So just wanted to differentiate between the risk report and the financial report. So overall, the capital program's experiencing time-related delays with a forecast of 63% of projects currently tracking to schedule. So doing really well at this stage. Growth and Three Waters projects make up the most of the variance, and they're now being adjusted for the Waters program or transferred to the Waikato Waters Limited as part of the transition. Funding area performance has been noted as outside of our delivery targets for renewals, level of service and growth. However, these delays relate to timing rather than the cancellation of those projects. So in summary, although some delays remain, most relate to when work is completed, not if the work is going to be completed or delivered. So a number of projects are expected to shift from the early years of the into the early years of the 26-27 annual plan and future years of the 27-37 long-term plan. I want to reassure this committee that the capital program is being actively monitored, both as John's team, but also through our executive team and through now the reporting coming through the Risk and Assurance Committee. And the focus of this is being on maintaining delivery momentum, particularly as we head into the annual plan and long-term plan. The team continues to manage program level risk and maintain transparency through regular reporting through council, including you'll see the improvements that we've made to this report. That was based on the information received in December last year. And so our focus remains on the infrastructure essential services, essential delivery that our community relies on while navigating reforms weather events and the transition to the new water entity. And so the impacts of the emerging risks of the February weather event will be more fully understood as we transition into our recovery and planning in the coming weeks and months. So taking that, John and I are happy to take any questions that you have.
Great, so we have Ian and then Claire. Yep.
Hey folks, this is one question, but it might be a little bit of a journey. So let's see how we go. And EL, you'll probably recognize some of these questions. So, so looking on page 166, there's a wee graph there that shows us going out to 90 million versus the original budget. And there's a note at the bottom that says, note this does not include the variance of estimated costs for the end of 25-26 year, but rather the approved forecast changes to date. So what does that 90 million reflect?
Just trying to track what page.
Sorry, so 166 in diligent, so it's page 4 of 12 in your report.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Thank you.
So it's got a current forecast line running out to 90 mil. So is that what we're actually spending, or is that just the time phase forecasting of our original budget?
It is a time forecast of initial budget. So the orange line that you see there would be the forecast as we had originally in LDP. And then the current forecast is as at the forecasting made in the changes made in October. And so that forecasting line predicts a time delay, so a time delay in delivery. So if you see the differences between the orange line and the purple line will give you the indication of that delay in delivery.
And so where do we see what the quantum of those projected changes are in terms of what we actually think we're going to spend?
So that will come through with the eight-month forecast, major forecast now.
And so I'll keep going on this one, which is, so how do I see how much work we've actually done? Because that line only reflects the original time phased budgeted spend. If we're forecasting overspend, that suggests that I haven't actually completed the work that I said I was going to do with that money originally, because that's why I need more money. So for my 90 million, I've managed to spend 90 million come the end of the year of the original budget. Have I done 90 million of the work I originally expected to have done?
So whilst the budget shows value earned to date, it doesn't necessarily reflect the timing of the completion of the work. So if you was to refer you back to, say, portfolio metrics on, what's the page? I'm sorry, I don't have the full page numbering.
You can use that 1 of 12. We can work it out.
My page 2.
Page 2 of 12 of the report, which is page 164 of diligent.
Yep. So in those in that table, the end of year forecasts shows a 28.9% differentiation between what we projected. So it means effectively at that stage, 29% was delayed.
But that's just what you've spent. It's not what you've done. So let's say one of those jobs was to, resurface 10 kilometers of road, and you had $1 million. You spent half a million dollars. How many kilometers of road have you resurfaced?
I think
it's not here is the answer, right? So, and the point is, unless you're tracking that, we don't know.
Perhaps we'll ask James if he could make a comment on that.
Yeah, so just maybe to add a little bit of context around the way we forecast and deliver actuals, right? So that orange line you saw, the forecast amount, that's based on the 4-month reforecast. The new one coming, which you'll see at Finance and Corporate at the end of this month, will be the 8-month. That's going to be a real good update of where you land. In terms of your question about, I hear what you're saying is, well, yeah, you're under budget, but did you spend over or under, and are you delivering, have you created more capacity or less, right? You've seen during the course since in the new triennium, a number of reports around capital overruns or the likes have come forward for your approval because we don't have the delegations to approve those. So to answer your question is, particularly when we forecast on P50 type work, we're already knowing that we've started to reframe our approach to P75 because we are getting cost overruns, whether it be through inflation, whether it be through changes in scope. I'll give you a great example, the stormwater paper that EL's recently brought for Alpha Street, is it? Or not Alpha Street? Yeah, so in that context is we have spent 40 million, but we, as an example, but we may have only delivered 35 million worth of what we projected to deliver because the costs to deliver are higher, but we'll have a much better feel for that for the 8-month reforecast. Does that make sense?
Sorry.
so-
Here, look at us talking to each other. Just come over here, James, come on. So my point is that, and it doesn't have to be, we don't need this visibility at this table all the way down at the bottom, right? But your project teams do. Because the only way you avoid those overruns is if, as you go, you measure that progress, right? That's the only, and I don't mean cost progress. Cost progress and physical progress are two different things, right? And unless you're measuring those two different things, you'll just run into a brick wall and then ask for more money.
So could we ask Eloise to give a comment? Because I know the team do absolutely monitor progress as well as dollars. Yeah.
I have understood what you have asked for, Owen, and this report doesn't show what you have asked for. That is all part of our improvement to the reporting that will come through to the committees and actually balancing what goes to the finance committee, what comes to risk and assurance, and what comes to service delivery in terms of what is being delivered in terms of activity. So we can take that point and make sure that somewhere in one of the reports to council that is included, so that it's a picture. So we're not, it's not in today. So I just want to confirm your question can't be answered because it's not in the report today, but totally understand what you're asking for.
And look, you know, let's be clear. I'm not asking for that because I have some particular desire to see that number in this report, right? The reason I'm keen to see that is because that's a well-proven measure of how you execute capital delivery. And then if we're not doing that, we should be. It's for our project teams, not really for me. I mean, it's a handy metric for me, but it's for the project teams is who it's for.
Yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you. And Claire, I believe you had some questions. Yeah.
Yes, thanks. I've got a number of them, but I just want to say I do like the changes that are coming through. Yeah, we're seeing metrics that we haven't had before, but I do totally support Ian in that request to understand the physical progress and to understand where our cost overruns might be so that we can have a way to manage them more closely. I just, firstly, it's a very technical thing about the difference between the forecast and the cash flow forecast. I just want to understand that more precisely. So I'm looking like that first turned up on page 2, I suppose, of your report. I've got that bar graph. Yeah. Because I would have thought that it would have been the same as the actuals or the same as the current forecast, but obviously there's a difference. Yeah. Could you just step me through that?
Yeah, so cash flow forecast is basically a term that we use in project delivery to tell us what we predict to spend on the project within that time frame or for that year. So it's basically looking at the program ahead and putting the volume of money in the right months, if you like. So if this graph would show to this year would include the cash flow for the following year. So forecast, and so forecast would be the financial changes we make on the back of that prediction of spend or trend of spend.
Oh, okay. So that's why it doesn't match the forecast, because you've moved stuff into future years. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. Now, I really like the chart that you've got. Oh, what page is that? I think it's the next page, page 3, where you've got the funding area KP status, and you are indicating that you're unlikely to achieve all of the forecast. And as a risk group, I'd really like to understand, are there any projects that won't be completed this financial year, but that will mean that we aren't going to deliver on some community outcomes that we had either indicated, signalled, or even made promises about? Because you've got a really good extensive list at the back, which is really helpful. But it's sort of is a technical report. It's about the numbers and all that. But I'm interested in, are we compromising any community outcomes or carrying a lot more risk? But by the way, you've rescheduled stuff.
So a lot of our scheduling does have to do with engagement and community buy-in into being able to deliver some of these projects. So often we have to mitigate and manage it as best we can. Most of what this picture tells us is that it sits in the waters and growth areas. So there might be deliverables part of those components which does need to shift. A huge aspect is to do with land acquisition. The timing of that can be very unpredictable, and so trying to predict our spend in accordance can be challenging at times. Yes, and so what those target spends in the current tracking shows us is that we're, especially in growth here, we're well behind because of those factors.
Yes, and just on the growth side of it, I presume that you're working with developers, so they're aware of the situation, and in a way there's kind of like a mutual understanding about, the timing of it, and that it's kind of like, you're working together on it. Yeah, is that an unreasonable assumption?
No, it's reasonable. So we continuously check in with our key developers to see what their tracking or trends are. They have to reforecast, so we can reforecast. And it does depend on market trends and uptake of development, and those sort of timing is things that we use to feed into our prediction as well.
Thank you. And now I'm just going to go to a specific project that's mentioned on page 5. It's actually the Resource Recovery Centre, saying that there might be additional costs involved in that. So my recollection of the LTP work was this was actually going to be funded pretty close, 100% from waste levy revenue. Yeah, so is that the case, or are you signalling that if you want to get it done in the time frame, we're actually going to have to find other alternative funding from it?
So we are looking at additional funding through MFE. It's more about a timing issue though, because if we were to build that recovery centre full blown as we would want it, we'd need to have the cash up front. We don't. The waste levy comes in on a regular basis, and that's spread over our LTP period is a significant sum, and it would be able to fully cover the expense for the recovery centre. However, we don't have it on day one, and so we are looking at measures of how we can progress this project in ways that, as funding becomes available, to enhance the build. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds quite reasonable, and I guess there's a way to ensure that it can be done in stages successfully.
Yes, and we'll bring more information once we have more on particular projects like that, to committee, to council.
Just got a couple of other they're straightforward. So I'm now looking at the list of waters projects, and I noted that some of them, it doesn't state that it's going to go across to Waikato Waters. Is that because some of them are hopefully going to be finished before the 1st of July changeover? Because I couldn't see a really clear pattern on that. Some of them it looked like definitely go across, but others I'm not sure. So I'm just getting a bit of clarity on that. In particular, I was looking at the Temple View pond structures, which, yeah, it looks like, well, there's no mention that they might be going across. In fact, I was surprised that we're still responsible for those, actually. Yeah, but just generally, most of them that can go across it's not likely we will be retaining them, intentionally.
Yeah, that is correct. So I can confirm the Templeville will transfer. So we are looking at who's best to deliver. If things are in flight or close to completion, we most likely want to finish that off. It's not good practice to play swapsies in the middle of a project. There are, some of the commentary around timing is we're looking at the best possible position to hand it over. So it might be finishing design and specification or what that handover location would be, and that might be stalling on some work and bringing some stuff forward or swapping things out. But yeah.
And then my last question is around the timing. It's probably from page 171 or page 9 of your report. Quite a few projects that you've listed relate to Hautapu, okay, and growth, that's happening there. And there's, pushing stuff out. So I was involved in one of the plan changes that affected that area, and the feedback that we were getting from the property owners in that area was that, there was quite a level of urgency of getting some of these things done. So my broad question is, the way you're rescheduling, is it going to put at risk some of the growth that is happening on the ground in Hautapu, so that it's all going to be lined up, that you're going to deliver in time for the level of change and growth that we know is happening there?
So we are looking at it as a program, and as you've mentioned, there are several lines on there. So and it's for that sort of purpose that we were looking at including some of the waters in part of the delivery, because whilst you're building the road, just as well do the waters whilst you're at it. We did need to stage the new roundabout and urbanisation because of land acquisition yet again. And there's some ongoing negotiations around other land parcels to be able to move this project forward, which we are actively dealing with. But overall, the majority of this package will be delivered as a unit. As we speak, we are close to getting some of the stormwater elements sorted out. And at November last year, we were asked to take a short pause on the wastewater reticulation for Hautapu. And we are reviewing the options there. That option will be taken forward as consultation with the community in Hautapu.
Yeah, so it is that just in time, but also ensuring that we're not going into a growth cell, putting in a growth project and then going back in and then putting in a level of service upgrade. So we're packaging them all up together so that we're delivering to the community as we need.
In the most efficient way possible. Yeah, and thank you. You've answered my questions really well, and that sounds great. Thank you.
Great. I think we had a final question from Owen before we take the recommendation on this paper.
Yes, I will firstly come back and say I do actually very much appreciate this reporting. I forgot to say that at the beginning of my last question. So thank you for all the hard effort. I do recognise it. Being 7 months into 12, I'm looking at the summary high-level report, just the one-pager. And in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got that 90 mil forecast. Now, if I use the old school forecasting technique of taking a ruler and drawing the same gradient line from now till the end of the year, that does not get me to 90 million. It gets me to 75 million if I'm lucky. So are there some big ticket items? Like what's significantly different in the next 5 months that's going to change our rate of spend, correcting myself, in those last 5 months versus the first 7?
So it's not an awful lot we can do about the growth stuff. Where land is a problem. It's kind of stuck. We are looking though at elements where we can progress with things like design. There is a lot of risk in there because you don't really want to design where you don't have land assurance space and area, that sort of stuff. So that'll continue. So progressing some of the design elements won't get you quite to that number though. I do want to point out though, this service delivery and community services, not the whole LTP. So there's a percentage that doesn't quite fit. So if I recall off the back of sort of, it's just closer to that $80 million mark for service delivery and community services. Yeah.
So noting we do have the Cambridge wastewater treatment plant, which is a significant project that is currently being delivered. And so that is and on track for delivery. And so that is a big ticket item.
That's a step change.
That
from
is a step
previous months.
change on our capital program.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Excellent, good debate. So I'd like to pass the recommendation that the Risk and Assurance Committee receives the report of John de Villiers, Manager of Project Delivery, titled Capital Program Update, Service Delivery and Community Services, as at 31 January 26. Could I have a move and seconder, please? Thanks, Owen and Claire. Thank you. So we're now moving into the PX part of our meeting, and we have a resolution to exclude the public. And as signalled earlier in the meeting under the order of the meeting, an amendment is required to include item 11, the organisational risk discussion with the CE, and that's under section 7.2A, 7.2B1 and section 2B2. So we have a recommendation that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting as set out on page 180 of the papers. Could I have a mover and seconder? Thanks, Owen and Claire.